If you enjoy Legends of Bass, please consider supporting me on Patreon. My patrons have access to great rewards, like bass tabs for every piece I play in this video. Click the link in the description to learn more. Hey guys, John here with another episode of Legends of Bass. Today we're going to continue our conversation on Chris Wolstenholme from Muse as we dive into the next two albums in Muse's discography. Before we get to that, I just want to take a moment, as always, to thank my supporters on Patreon, especially Chris Slade, my top supporter. Thanks, Chris. If you haven't had a chance to check out my Patreon yet, follow the link in the description. There you'll find a lot of great stuff, like early access to Legends of Bass videos before they hit YouTube, tabs for everything I play, the ability to vote on future players, as well as the songs I cover from them. You can also check out my bio there. A lot of cool stuff. Check it out, guys. Alright, and with that, let's get back to the bass playing. So when we last left off, we were talking about Muse's first two albums, Showbiz and Origin of Symmetry. Today we're going to pick up where we left off with 2003's Absolution. Now, this album was huge for Muse. It had quite a few singles on it, really big, a lot of radio play, and this is where Muse really elevated and became really a well-known international act. They already were playing festivals and stuff, but now they were booking their own arena gigs. They were really big by this point. Let's not forget Absolution had some of their biggest songs on it. Stockholm Syndrome, Time Is Running Out, Hysteria. Just another great album all around. This album sounds absolutely massive. Once again, for a three-piece, they are just sounding just huge. And that has a lot to do with the various tones that we were discussing in the previous episode. So once again, you have these very large bass distortion sounds with synths mixed in. You have just epic guitar tones and layerings of guitars, both parts and just even multiple guitars playing the same thing in different tones, and just huge boomy drums. It just creates this massive sound. It's one of my favorite things about Muse, is just how big they sound. Now, speaking of unique bass tones, the first song is a great example, and that's Time Is Running Out. Right off the bat, it starts with this super synthy, super crackly, overdriven synth sound on the bass. And then it jumps in and it gets a little bit thicker. And then before the chorus drops, you have sort of a very clean part that you wouldn't expect until you just slam into that hard and heavy chorus. And then as we come out of the chorus, you'll hear that there's like a triple overdrive going on, which I used a few different components to a combination of an overdrive with sort of a big muff sound to get that huge, just earth-shaking sound. I think you guys will like it, and let's not forget that that verse just has a great groove, a great bass line, even if it was clean. Anyway, here it is. Time Is Running Out. The next song we're going to talk about from Absolution is Stockholm Syndrome. Now, this is one of my favorite Muse songs ever since one of my friends first let me hear it. When I first was starting to hear songs from Muse, I had heard Hysteria, I think, first, and then somebody turned me on to Stockholm Syndrome, and I really started to fall in love with the band's sound. This is a drop D tune, really heavy, a lot of good riffs in here, and again, just a huge, just massive chorus. When you hear it come in, it's just that big muff and maybe some synth sound mixed in there, really big. But what I really love is what he's doing on the verses. So what's cool is while Matt is descending on the guitar at the start of the verses, he actually just stays on that D note the whole time. And it's great because it almost creates this tension, and there's like a release when he actually starts and does the bass line on the second part of the verse. So you'll see that here. And then, of course, like I mentioned, there's just that huge chorus. Not too complex. I did notice when I was playing this back, however, because I know people are going to comment on it, I did actually play the chorus wrong. I think it's just supposed to be just descending straight down the neck, and I went up. I don't know what I was thinking, but now I'm putting the last touches on the edits here, and hey, we all make mistakes, I guess. Anyway, check it out, guys. Stockholm Syndrome. Next song we're going to talk about from Absolution is Falling Away With You. Now this one's an interesting one because it's in a typical Muse fashion. It has sort of this juxtaposition where you have something that's either soft or poppy or what have you, and then all of a sudden you have this heavy, aggressive, chorus or B section, if you will. So this song starts off with this sort of dreamy, lullaby-ish verse and intro, and it almost sounds like there's a harp or something going on in the beginning. Maybe there probably is, I don't know. We can check the Wikipedia page. But then all of a sudden, where the clip picks up here, you'll see that when the drums and bass drop in, it starts to get heavy, it starts to get bigger. And then my personal favorite part of the song, why I included it, is when the bass goes into this great sort of arpeggiated thing where he could have just as easily played the root notes of the chords, but he sort of arpeggiates and does this great constant rhythmic approach, and it just brings a better musicality to it. It's more melodic, it's a lot more original and unique, and that's why I included it. Check it out, guys. Falling Away With You. All right, the next song we have from Absolution is Hysteria. Now, Hysteria is probably one of, if not the most popular Muse songs of all time, in my opinion. I remember hearing it all the time on the radio. I'll still catch it every now and then if I'm streaming one of those rock stations. But how can you not love it? It starts off with that, very, again, unique, even different than what we heard on Time Is Running Out, but a synth overdrive bass line, which is very busy, very original kind of sound. And then when those guitar bends and that drum beat starts coming in, you're in for a wild ride. And then in a great Muse fashion, you just have this super overdriven pop big chorus. It's so anthemic, and it just sounds great. But of course, I had to include it. This is one of the most famous Muse bass lines. To get the sound, I'm sort of combining a synthesizer bass stop box kind of thing with some overdrive and a lot of tweaking to get this. And of course, I know it's not exactly Chris's tone, but I think it's a pretty good approximation of it. Anyway, guys, check it out. Hysteria. And the last song we're going to talk about from Absolution is Butterflies and Hurricanes. So what's interesting about Butterflies and Hurricanes, I see a lot of tabs online where you hear sort of this tapping keyboard kind of noise, and I see a lot of people tab it out where Chris does a tapping thing on the A and D string. He's tapping, and I actually did find a few live clips where he's doing that, but I'm fairly certain that he's not doing that on the album. And it's just sort of a keyboard sound. So I didn't include that piece, but this one I wanted to include just for the sheer endurance of it. This, along with Stockholm Syndrome, I've seen him play live with just fingers, and what a workout it is. He's just going constant the whole time, and there aren't a lot of breaks, very just continuous, busy. So while the bass line is not incredibly complex, there's a lot of simple movement that it's just what the bass is supposed to be, keeping that good root going along throughout the song. You got that cool slide during the verse. And again, it's really just something that even took me quite a while to just sort of play nice and clean throughout. Didn't want to use a pick, wanted to keep it pure. So here it is, Butterflies and Hurricanes. and that's going to bring us to Muse's next album, 2006's Black Holes and Revelations. Now, this album was just huge. I remember this came out when I was in, I guess it was maybe junior year of high school. It came out in the summer, though, so I guess it was on the way to senior year. But just really big, again, a lot of radio play with songs like Starlight, and just a whole new chapter for the band. I had mentioned that during Absolution, they started to gain a lot of notoriety. Absolution finally brought them mainstream success in the United States. It's something you hear a lot about from British bands or European bands. It's always cool for an American band to make it, across the pond. But when a European or British band can make it in America, it's a whole huge new audience. It's a whole new entire, basically, continent. When you combine Canada with that to tour, and Mexico for that matter. Here by this point, Muse is well into their world tours. So what's really amazing about this album, though, is they sort of took a different approach, and it yielded some of their best results yet. They had sort of a low pressure writing and recording of the album because they had already established themselves. They had finished a big worldwide tour, and now there wasn't really a deadline to deliver another album to their record company, so they sort of took things a little differently. They recorded this, I believe, in an old French chateau I was just reading, and it just was a more relaxed environment. They used some vintage equipment. It was more simple. It wasn't as wild, but technology-wise. And it just yielded some great results. You have some of their greatest songs ever on here. Chris has actually been quoted as saying that some of their best performances were during this studio sessions. Some of Matt's best vocals, some of the best, drumming and bass playing. One other thing I wanted to throw in before we get down to the songs is a little bit about the title, Black Holes and Revelations, and sort of set the stage for the material here. I found this quote on Wikipedia from an interview that Matt Bellamy did with Q Magazine, where he says, "Black Holes and Revelations. There are two areas of songwriting for me that make up the majority of this album. A revelation about yourself, something personal, something genuine of an everyday nature that maybe people can relate to. Then the black holes are these songs that are from more of an unknown regions of the imagination." And you can really see it in the song titles, and there's some conspiracy theory things. There's a song Exopolitics, there's Assassin, there's more of this sort of sci-fi-ish space rock thing with Knights of Sidonia, Supermassive Black Hole. So the concepts are both sort of very heady with a lot of space concepts and sci-fi and things like that. But at the same time, there are the pieces that are the Revelations, the Starlight, the simpler, poppier, lovey songs. But nonetheless, great bass playing throughout. The first song we're going to talk about from Black Holes and Revelations is Starlight. Now, this is one of probably Chris Wolstenholme's simplest bass lines, but I love the bass tone. I love the simplicity of how it really drives the song. There's some just simple, tasteful fills that he does on the verses, and just the heavy chorus, which really brings a great bottom rocking low end to the song. It's a great tone he's using too. It's sort of like a big muff distortion with sort of a wah sound on it. I did my best as usual to mimic that. Let's see what you guys think. Here it is, Starlight. next song we're going to talk about from Black Holes and Revelations is Supermassive Black Hole. This one is a great riffy number, really interesting, again, sort of in that sci-fi, cosmic, space rock theme. It's got some great tones. I love the blown out speaker sound on the guitar. As usual, just that fat distortion on the bass, sort of synthy, wah-ish sound at times. The bass line's pretty straightforward. It's got a rocking groove right after Matt's guitar intro when they all come in. But what I really love is the chorus, which is being played, I'm pretty sure the exact same thing on the guitar and the bass. And it's just a great riff. Really has a marching, driving sort of feel along with the drum beat. And just really groovy, real fun to play. Check it out, Supermassive Black Hole. The next one we're going to talk about from Black Holes and Revelations is Invincible. Invincible's an interesting one because, again, it has this sort of combination of what seems to just be sort of dreamy, softer kind of sounding Muse, as soft as they kind of will get sometimes. But it also has this out of nowhere surprising breakdown and this like distorted bass solo. So where the clip picks up, you'll see is, I think it might be the second chorus. He's just playing simple quarter notes with the beat, simple, driving sort of sound. And then all of a sudden, he does this great distorted bass solo at the end of that chorus, and it just takes the song into this fast, like, driven part, and then you go into this wild guitar solo with weird effects, and he's doing a great sort of nice rhythmic progression underneath that. Another interesting note is that the song is in it's drop C, and he also drops the D string, so the tuning is actually C A C G. So sort of interesting there. I've seen a lot of tabs online where it's in standard tuning. Much easier to play if you tune it in C A C G. Anyway, here it is, Invincible. Okay, next song we're going to talk about is City of Delusion. This is one of my personal favorites on the album. Once again, they're harkening back to that sort of Latin-y sound that you hear on like Uno or, Dark Shines kind of has that interesting sort of, I don't even know how to describe it, but all these songs remind me of each other. The bass playing has a very groovy sort of almost I mean, this song definitely has that Latin-y flair to it. But what I really love about it is, again, he's bringing in an interesting tone to really make the bass stand out. It's not quite what we heard on Dark Shines in terms of a wah. It's a little bit more open, a little bit almost more like sort of just a simple filter, I guess you would say. But it also has sort of this sweeping phaser or flanger kind of sound. But anyway, great bass line, very busy. He's all over the neck, quite a few different parts that he plays, and you'll get to see the whole breadth of that in this clip. Here it is, City of Delusion.
Can I believe?
And the last song we're going to discuss in this episode, how can we not talk about Knights of Sidonia? Now, this one is a real sort of endurance number. When you start from the top of the song, great movement, great chord progression, and Chris does a great job carrying that along throughout the whole song. But the real part that I wanted to discuss is the end of the song. One of my favorite Muse riffs of all time. Really just a huge, energy explosion when you see them live. This is like always like the moment I anticipate the few times I've seen them, right when they break down and go into this riff at the end and the whole GA pit is jumping. It just goes crazy. One of my favorite riffs here. And that's, again, the closing riff. So not too difficult, but when you lock in with the drum beat and the guitar, it's a great heavy catchy riff that sort of harkens back to their early roots of like that sort of Rage Against the Machine sort of heavy riff rock sort of thing. I love it. Here it is, Knights of Sidonia. Alright guys, well that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed seeing Muse's next chapter, a lot more great bass lines and a lot more tones and just experimenting and interesting subject matter that comprised Absolution and Black Holes and Revelations. There's still a lot to see in our final video on Chris Wolstenholme, which will cover the rest of the Muse albums. If you haven't had a chance, again, please check out my Patreon. There's a lot of great stuff to find there. Even if you don't want to or don't care to support me, that's fine. Go check it out anyway. There's a bio on there. I try to make posts on there and interact with the community. And other than that, As always, check out my band. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next episode of Legends of Bass.